Hi, this is Jim Peck, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson, welcoming you to this week's edition of TV Confidential, radio talk show about television that will dedicate its entire program this week to the life and legacy of Wink Martindale. Wink Martindale, the amiable host of such popular game shows as Gambit, Trivial Pursuit, and of course, Tic Tac Dough, and a man whose name in the history of televised game shows was synonymous with the word host. Wink Martindale passed away Tuesday, April 15th at the age of 91. You might recall that in December 2018, we had an opportunity to talk to Wink Martindale here in TV Confidential. It's a wide-ranging conversation that not only discussed the backstory of Tic Tac Dough and why game shows have always remained a popular staple of television, but we also talked about Wink's deep roots in radio, both as a DJ, announcer, and talk show host, the gold record he won in 1959 for the spoken word recording Deck of Cards, and of course his long association with Elvis Presley. We will replay our conversation with Wink Martindale at the end of our second hour. We hope you stay tuned for that. In the meantime, joining us right now is our friend Steve Beverly. Steve Beverly, recently retired professor of broadcast journalism at Union University in Jackson, Tennessee, as well as the host of Steve Beverly's TV Classics, the weekly TCM-like festival of classic TV shows from the 50s and 60s that originates on eplustv6.com, but is also available on the PBS app. You download the PBS app and you look up West TN PBS, and there'll be a host of menus of shows, including Steve Beverly's TV Classics, so you can enjoy Steve. Steve's been doing this show for a long time, and it's a very well put together, very fun show. Steve, of course, is our resident game show historian, whether he likes it or not. But he was also one of the people behind the Game Show Congress, the annual gathering of game show fans and game show personnel that took place in Los Angeles in the early 2000s. He also spent, I don't think this is the only time you spent quality time with Wink Martindale, but you spent an evening with Wink many, many years ago. You hosted a live audience participation show in Jackson, Tennessee, the land of Wink Martindale, and you recently rebroadcast that as part of Steve Beverly's TV Classics.
That's true. It was an amazing day that we had. We had such a full studio that I thought that they were going to have to get the fire marshals in there, as you can well imagine. Word spread very quickly that Wink was in the house. And so I can tell you there were faculty members as well as students that crammed in that day. But it was in November of 2007. And we had an opportunity to do a 90-minute live show with Wink and to let the audience have an opportunity to ask what they wanted to of him. And it turned out to be a wonderful reflection of his life and career in his own words. And all I had to do was push the button and say, all right, let's have your question now, because you can imagine one of the best communicators that we've ever had in television and how comfortable and relaxed he was in that format as he was in anything that he did. And so it turned out that that's been one that was on the save list for now 18 years. Yeah. And the loss of Wink at the age of 91, it was something we immediately went to and have used that as the basis for not only our PBS tribute to Wink, but also to our 3-hour Steve Beverly's TV Classics tribute, because we have a little more time to play with there. But it also, I think on the PBS version, you just get really Wink being Wink.
Steve Beverly interviewed Wink Martindale for a 90-minute evening. It was called Wink Comes Home. It was called Wink Comes Home. He recently rebroadcast that 90-minute audience participation show, which was an evening of Wink recollecting his long career in television and taking questions from the studio audience, which means Wink was in his element because even though all game shows and were taped, but they're live on tape, so it's real time. And Wink was a master at live audience interaction. Plus, he worked in radio for a long, long time. So he is very
Yes.
much in his element. Wink Comes Home, hosted by Steve Beverly, is available for viewing on demand as part of Steve Beverly's TV Classics. Go to e+tv6.com to look up the archive of that, or if you have the PBS app, look up West TN PBS, and you'll find a menu of shows, including Steve Beverly's TV Classics, and you can look up that particular program and other episodes of Steve Beverly's TV Classics. Steve is spending a few minutes of his day talking to us about Wink Martindale, and we've said this before. We had Randy West, our mutual friend, on early in the program. He shared a few memories of Wink. And one of the things we talked about that you can certainly appreciate is Wink was a broadcaster most of his life. He taught himself broadcasting at a very, very early age, didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, this is a guy who, while his friends in Jackson, Tennessee, where he grew up and where he was born and raised, while many of them were looking on careers as, doctors, lawyers, in fact, some of his own family did that, or those that decided to go into a family business somewhere, he knew from before he was 10 years old that he wanted to be a broadcaster. And so he would take Life magazine and lock himself away in his bedroom and read every article that, until he got called for supper, he read every article that was in Life magazine's issues every week out loud. And that is how he perfected that golden voice of his. By the time he was probably in junior high school, he already had a voice that was well mature beyond his years. And that's how he did it. And, there are a lot of stories out there about how somebody began to develop that kind of talent, but that's a classic because he had just such a tremendous, relaxed but resonant voice, and that's how he did that. And so he never looked back. He just made a pest of himself at WPLI radio, and it was an AM station in Jackson, and he made a pest of himself to the point, and this is how so many people get a job in broadcasting, at least the way they used to, is that you just hang around the station, nag them to death until they finally would let you have an air shift somewhere to see how you could do. Usually it was on the weekend or in just absolutely a graveyard hour, but to see how you could do and how you could handle it. Well, he could handle it. And that's how his start began on a small 250-watt radio station in Jackson, Tennessee.
As I like to say, he mastered the art of being persistent without being a pain in the you-know-what.
Yes, absolutely. Couldn't agree with the description more because, I mean, this is, again, I can't tell you how many peers and friends that I had going into broadcasting, that's how they did it. They would get to know, and I mean, in a sense, that's how I did, is because I kept nagging them and saying, look, you got a 6 o'clock newscast here on your station. I can do sports reports on what's going on at the various high school sporting events around here. And finally, I think just to get rid of me and all of my nagging about that, they finally said, okay, call us in a report and we'll see whether we'll use it or not. So I did. And so then I did another one the next day, and they said, these are pretty good. Let's just keep doing it and see how everything works. That's how I got my foot in the door. And so Wink was one that paved the way for everybody to go in that direction in the early 1950s when actually the late 40s, when he finally made his way as a high school student. And a lot of people don't know this. Wink called play-by-play sports. He did play-by-play of high school football and of basketball. And so trust me, those are the training grounds for somebody to be a quality ad-libber, which you have to be as a game show host. And so he had built all of these skills before he was 20 years old and did so proficiently. So, there's not necessarily a book written about how you get into broadcasting, but Wink did it.
Wink did it. And in many respects, Steve, Wink's own autobiography, Winking at Life, is as close to a how to do it because he shares many of the stories of how he got his start in radio, doing the things that you just mentioned. But he also he was a person of faith. And he worked very hard. He was ready for the opportunities when a lot of these opportunities came to him, including how he got to record Deck of Cards. But he was also very mindful of the role Providence played in his life, putting him in the right position at the right time. And fortunately, he had the skills to take advantage of those opportunities whenever they came to him.
Yeah, and Wink did what most broadcasters wouldn't do, and that is he was not afraid to take a risk. Broadcasting, any profession can have risks involved in it by moving from one location to another, but Wink took a big gamble while he was at a very young age, so to speak, to make this kind of a leap. But he sent an audition tape to WHBQ radio in Memphis. And all of a sudden, they wanted to hire him. His father-in-law at the time told him, he said, okay, if you do this, you're also going to get an education just in case this broadcasting thing does not work out. And so it ended up that he went to the University of Memphis, which is at that time was Memphis State University. He went there and got his degree at the same time that he was on WHBQ. And of course, but he took that gamble. A lot of people are afraid of failure. And so they won't take a risk to go to a bigger market. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that there are some people who are willing to take that leap of faith. And he did that. Same thing happened when he decided that his chain had a station in Los Angeles and that he thought he was ready for it. And so he took a gamble and they decided they were ready to take him on. And that's where the career really skyrocketed. But that's one thing I think that really set Wink apart is that he wasn't afraid of failure. He took a gamble and did these things, and he'd be the first to tell you that particularly his first game show that went national, What's This Song, and others, What's This Song was a good show, but it couldn't beat I Love Lucy in the ratings. Right. And so, it did not skyrocket his career. And that didn't really begin to happen until he got Gambit, and that became a success in 1972. But all the steps along the way, Wink was a never give up kind of guy. And that's what you have to do to have major success in broadcasting, radio, television, what have you. And while he was building his television career, he was still doing radio. And because he was solid out there in Los Angeles with the Wink Martindale show on radio. So, I could not say any more about how, even though, as I said, there are no textbooks that have been written on this, Wink could have written it just by what he did in his career.
Steve Beverly is the host of Wink Comes Home, a 90-minute audience participation show featuring Wink Martindale, in which Wink reflected on his life and career and took questions from the audience. Wink Comes Home recently rebroadcasted on Steve Beverly's TV Classics. You can watch that 90-minute tribute on demand at eplustv6.com, or if you have the PBS app, download the PBS app, look up West TN PBS, and you can catch the archive of Wink Comes Home and all other episodes of Steve Beverly's TV classics. Wink Martindale passed away Tuesday, April 15th at the age of 91.
Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call Karen Strain at 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
One more item. If you're starting a company, particularly one that is in an emerging market, you know that averting any sort of legal dispute is crucial to your business plan. Our friends at Tectonic Law offer an array of services that can help you avoid and preempt future litigation while also developing and protecting your intellectual property and intangible assets. Tectonic Law serves the needs of a host of emerging industries throughout California and beyond, including industrial designers, beverage makers, artists, farmers, retail stores, health practitioners, wellness experts, cosmetics manufacturers, nonprofit organizations, innovators in sustainable practices, and libraries. Go to tectoniclaw.com to learn more about how Tectonic Law can help your business thrive. tectoniclaw.com. Rock solid representation for groundbreaking industries.
Well, hi, this is Lindsay Bloom, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
Well, I'm going to try the center, animal songs.
Animal songs for $300 to the pot. According to the lyrics of this 1967 hit song by a famous singing duo, orangutans are skeptical.
Orangutans, Wink.
Oh. Did I say orange? I didn't. No, I didn't. I did not say that. I'm going to start all over. I usually read these over before we start the show. According to the lyrics of this 1967 hit song by a famous singing duo, orangutans are skeptical, giraffes are insincere, and elephants are kindly, but they're dumb. First, name the song, and then name the duo who sang it. Dorothy, name the song.
I don't believe I know the song.
It's At the Zoo. Yes. And the duo who sang it, Simon and Garfunkel. And if you feel bad now, Dorothy, you don't feel as dumb as I do, I can guarantee you. Let's move the categories around while I pick myself up.
You mentioned Wink was a professional ad-libber, but there was more to his success as a host than just being a professional ad-libber, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and to be successful, you have to have more than that. By ad-libbing, you're thinking on your feet, and you have to not have every word you say scripted. But, I mean, this is a guy who knew how to adapt to conditions that would change. Say, if he was doing a game show and suddenly there was an error that was made as far as the questions were concerned, he could smoothly go, and part of that was his radio background, because you have to learn the art of segue from one segment to the other heavily in radio. Well, in television, it's more when something goes wrong that you have to be very quick in how to think on your feet and adapt. And one of the things that Wink did so well in the way he conducted himself, he was almost like being a producer on the floor, because he was always with an idea. If something, let's say if they had to stop tape for some reason, he'll say, why don't we come back with this? And it'll make a connection with what I said when we had to stop tape. He was always thinking upstairs like this. And I think that's one of the things that you look at for anybody that does this so well. And I think the other thing, Ed, is that Wink always listened to what his contestants had to say. I don't care if it's Ted Koppel or if it's Bob Barker, whoever has ever been asked about one of the secrets to being a successful interviewer, or to, if you will, an MC, is that if you're having to interact with people, is listen to what they have to say and react. Because if you don't do that, then you're going to be one of these people that will repeat the same item and information in what they say in your next question. I mean, it's amazing how when I was teaching students, I would always tell them, I say, okay, you may have some key questions you want to ask, but listen very carefully, because this person you're interviewing may say something that blocks out a question you already have down there in the future, and you got to be able to adapt and think of something to connect with that. Wink was a tremendous listener, whether he was on the air or off the air. If you engaged in a conversation with him one-on-one, he would make you feel like you were the most important person in the room. I know that from many personal experiences with him, but he was just very, very adept at listening to somebody else. He was not thinking about what the next thing is that he has to do. He was truly interested in people. He really liked people. And that was another good quality that you have to have if you're going to really be a success at the world of game shows.
Gambit is the show I first remember watching. It was it debuted, if I remember correctly, on the same day that the Bob Barker Price is Right debuted on CBS. It didn't run anywhere near as long as the Price is Right, but it had a good 4 or 5 year run, and he had a co-host, Elaine Stewart, and that's when I first became aware of who Wink Martindale was. Although for most people, he's synonymous with Tic Tac Dough, which to me, I never thought much of that particular game format, but it connected with the audience, and that's who we think of Wink immediately. We think of Wink and Tic Tac Dough.
Well, you do, because that was his longest running success that he had. And it was right around that period that also on the Tonight Show, Johnny Carson would usually say and it was always a planned situation, particularly on a Friday night. And he'd be talking to Ed McMahon, and Ed would be talking about all of these things he was going to be doing over the weekend. And it was always a joke to set up Johnny. And he'd say, "Johnny, what are you going to be doing for the weekend?" And Johnny would take that quick pause and he'd say, "Oh, I thought I'd go over to Wink Martindale's house and we'll play Light Your Candle." And there was a running gag of that, and Wink loved it. He said, "The only thing I didn't like about it is that Johnny never asked me on the show."
Steve Beverly is with us via Zoom as we remember the life and career and legacy of game show legend Wink Martindale. Wink Martindale passed away Tuesday, April 15th, at the age of 91. Take a quick time out. We'll continue our tribute to Wink Martindale. We come back on TV Confidential.
Who needs a vacation? Are you ready for an unforgettable getaway? Start packing your bags, because Branson, Missouri, the vacation and entertainment capital of the U.S., is calling your name. For just $99 per person, here's what you get. A full 3-day, 2-night stay in a luxury resort hotel. A delicious full breakfast buffet every morning you're here. And when you call right now, free show tickets worth up to $100. That's right, free show tickets to an award-winning show on us. You don't have to leave the country for an amazing vacation. You can drive or fly to Branson and have an incredible time. Whether you bring in the whole family or just planning a romantic escape, this trip is built for you. We guarantee you'll love Branson. This is not a timeshare. It's just an unbeatable vacation deal for only $99 per person. You book now, you can use your tickets anytime this year. You don't even need to know your travel dates to lock in the special price. Hurry, because this offer won't last long. Call our Branson vacation experts today.
800-435-1887. 800-435-1887. 800-435-1887. That's 800-435-1887.